President delivers first address to the United Nations General Assembly. The UN Education First initiative gets underway and the Guyanese head of state sits on the committee and Gaia Expo 2012 opens. We'll bring you the details of these and other stories in this week's edition of The Diary as we recap the highlights of the week, September 22 to 28. I am your host, Fabian Krause. Do stay tuned.
Do you know that more Guyanese have been able to become owners of motor vehicles through credit facilities offered by the commercial banks? There are close to 80,000 vehicles currently on the country's roads because of a positive growth economy since 1993. Do you know that the Diamond East Bank Demerara has been transformed from cane fields to that of an urban center with an ultra-modern housing scheme with thousands of residents, 3 commercial banks, a multi-million-dollar furniture store, petrol station, a state-of-the-art medical diagnostics center, and a primary and secondary school?
Do you know that for the first 6 months of 2012, $1.5 billion has been spent on the construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of urban, rural, community, and hinterland roads in all the administrative regions?
President Donna Ramotar delivered an inaugural address to world leaders at the 67th United Nations General Assembly on September 27, reflecting the Guyana government's long-held position on upholding the rule of law and a tolerant world.
President Ramotar's address made relevance to current global issues like ongoing conflicts over religion and politics in the Middle East. He made reference to the insurgency by the Muslim community in the Middle East and the subsequent attack on the United States Embassy in Libya, where appointed Ambassador Chris Stevens was killed following outrage at a video offensive to Islam.
While we condemn the attacks and insult that the recent film heaped on Islam, we believe that nothing of that nature can justify the murder of diplomats and the violence we have seen.
The incident, which also influenced similar reactions in Egypt, Tunisia, Indonesia, and other Muslim countries, was condemned by U.S. President Barack Obama when he addressed the UN General Assembly on September 25.
The best homage we can pay to their memory is to work even harder for a just, peaceful, and tolerant world.
The address by President Ramotar also zeroed in on the political conflicts in Syria over the rule of President Bashar al-Assad and the countless number of civilian deaths that occurred as a result.
It is my country's sincere hope that peace will soon come to the Syrian people. Guyana urges the renewal of efforts to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. The international community must contribute to peace and not to the exasperation of strife and conflict. Any abandonment of its role in bringing peace to Syria will result in greater suffering in that country and the undermining of security in that part of the world.
The Israeli and Palestinian war is still unresolved, and a resolution, according to President Ramotar, is key to a lasting peace in the Middle East. Guyana recognizes the state of Palestine based on its 1967 border and supports her aspirations to full membership of the United Nations. Guyana again placed on record its opposition to the economic, financial, and commercial embargo imposed against its sister CARICOM state of Cuba, having regard to the principles of sovereignty of states within the United Nations Charter, and called for an immediate end to this policy. President Ramotar expressed the view that lifting the blockade can allow Cuba to make greater contributions as it has done to the social development of many developing countries.
The Guyanese head of state shared the success story about Guyana's economy at the 67th United Nations General Assembly, but expressed concern that weakness in the international economy, if prolonged, is likely to affect sustained growth in developing countries.
Speaking to world leaders in his inaugural UN address, President Ramotar made reference to Guyana maintaining stability during the time of the global recession and achieving an economic growth rate of approximately 5% per annum over the past 6 years.
Guyana has had to face many serious challenges. However, we have worked steadfastly in an effort to build a more resilient economy and country. We have managed to forestall the worst effects of the international economic crisis.
Guyana was considered a country with bright growth prospects, while other nations in CARICOM were hindered by the economic downturn. The economy recorded a 2.8% growth in real gross domestic product according to the 2012 mid-year report.
This growth rate, I believe, is the result of the investments that we have been making in our people. More than 30% of our budget is dedicated to education, health, housing, water, and social programs to help the most vulnerable.
The concern for Guyana is staying on a sustained course in the face of an unfriendly, volatile international environment, which takes its toll on small, vulnerable economies.
We are nonetheless conscious that sustainability of our growth and that of other developing countries would be hindered if the weakness in the international economy is prolonged.
The crisis has seen donor funding to HIV/AIDS programs curtailed, and concerns about narco-trafficking and the staggering global response to the climate crisis are increasing. In this regard, Guyana continues to advocate on behalf of vulnerable states.
Guyana therefore continues to advocate for reform of the graduation policies and aid allocation criteria on international financial institutions to take account of the structural vulnerability and level of economic resilience of small states. Measures to ease the debt burden, renewed access to concessionary financing for highly indebted middle-income countries, as well as the strengthening of financial regulations.
You're watching The Diary, more still ahead.
Do you know that more Guyanese have been able to become owners of motor vehicles through credit facilities offered by the commercial banks? There are close to 80,000 vehicles currently on the country's roads because of a positive growth economy since 1993. Do you know that the Diamond East Bank Demerara has been transformed from cane fields to that of an urban center with an ultra-modern housing scheme with thousands of residents, 3 commercial banks, a multi-million-dollar furniture store, petrol station, a state-of-the-art medical diagnostic center, and a primary and secondary school?
Do you know that for the first 6 months of 2012, $1.5 billion has been spent on the construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of urban, rural, community, and hinterland roads in all the administrative regions?
The Guyanese head of state took the issue of copyright laws on educational materials to the United Nations when the Education First initiative that seeks to increase access and lift the quality of education for children worldwide was launched on September 26. President Ramotar sits on the committee to oversee the initiative, pioneered by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
President Ramotar called on the United Nations Children's Fund to examine the possibilities of reviewing the copyright laws regarding educational materials, especially textbooks, if the world is serious about making education accessible to all. He was highlighting the challenges involving countries like Guyana while delivering his address at the United Nations Education First initiative. The sanctioning of procurement and photocopying of textbooks became controversial, and the authorized distributor, the United Kingdom's Publishers Association, took legal action. President Ramotar recently said he is looking forward to a speedy and amicable solution to the issue, which the government defended on the premise of quality and price. He spoke of Guyana's achievements in the education sector while at the launch of the UN Education First initiative, as well as the challenges for those in the remote areas. The goal for universal access to primary education, including gender and geographic parity, has been achieved, and the goal at the secondary level is within reach. With statistics showing more males in developing countries are dropping out of the school system, the Guyanese head of state called on the stakeholders involved in the initiative to pay close attention. The need for more support to propel education, particularly in poor and vulnerable areas, was also echoed by the head of state. The Education First initiative, according to the UN Secretary General, will focus on 3 priorities over the next 5 years: putting every child in school, improving the quality of learning, and fostering global citizenship through education.
Guyana's signature trade fair and exposition, GuyExpo, opened on the evening of September 27, attracting thousands at the Sophia Exhibition Center to see the best of what Guyana has to offer.
Strengthening the traditional, embracing the new is the theme for GaiaExpo 2012, with locally produced goods and services put on display in range, diversity, quality, and price. Prime Minister Samuel Hinds joined in cutting the ribbon to mark the opening of the exposition, along with Acting Minister of Tourism Irfan Ali and representatives of the private sector.
It is an occasion when nearly all of us find some pleasant surprise. We didn't know that we could produce, that our people could produce those goods with that quality and at good prices. GaiaExpo is therefore an occasion for celebrating our achievements.
This year's exposition attracted over 400 exhibitors, including foreign representatives from Brazil, Barbados, the United States, Canada, China, India, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Suriname, Grenada, and Trinidad and Tobago.
GaiaExpo, from one year to another, challenges us. We Guyanese over the last decades have been able to provide better for ourselves each year through our work, the work of our brains and our hands, providing a greater amount of goods and services, whether from our own direct production or in partnership with others or in exchange with others from other countries.
Growth experienced in Guyana over the last 6 years and investor confidence were attributed to prudent management of Guyana's economy, especially at the time of the global recession.
If you're an investor and you're looking to invest in the Caribbean and South America, Guyana is the place for your investment. 2, if you're a local business person, if you're a member of the local private sector, and you're, for example, in the mining sector, and you have excess liquidity, the place to reinvest that excess liquidity is Guyana, and you must do it now.
The private sector that was once subdued by state occupation of the majority of the country's assets is now at the center of growth. Partnership has proven to be the greatest catalyst to economic development, economic growth, and economic expansion.
More features after the break.
Do you know that more Guyanese have been able to become owners of motor vehicles through credit facilities offered by the commercial banks? There are close to 80,000 vehicles currently on the country's roads because of a positive growth economy since 1993. Do you know that the Diamond East Bank Demerara has been transformed from cane fields to that of an urban center with an ultra-modern housing scheme with thousands of residents, 3 commercial banks, a multi-million-dollar furniture store, petrol station, a state-of-the-art medical diagnostic center, and a primary and secondary school?
Do you know that for the first 6 months of 2012, $1.5 billion has been spent on the construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of urban, rural, community, and hinterland roads in all the administrative regions?
A high-level delegation from the United Nations Development Programme is expected in Guyana as part of a Caribbean-wide review. The director of the program and a delegation met the Guyanese head of state in New York for talks on September 25 at the UN General Assembly.
The United Nations Development Programme is a partner with the Guyana government in a number of development projects and is satisfied with the fruitful outcome of that partnership in the various sectors. The most recent was the signing off on the release of the Norway funds to be channeled to the Amerindian Development Fund for projects at the community level. The organization partnered with the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment in July, signing a $33 million agreement for the execution of a 6-month project aimed at developing a comprehensive strategy that will be adopted as a policy for sustainable management of Guyana's natural resources. The UNDP worked with Guyana on developing the Country Action Plan, a process that began in 2010 when the UN initiated Plan for Successful Implementation of the 2006-2011 United Nations Development Assistance Framework. During the visit of the high-level team of the UNDP, the President is anticipating new partnership projects and initiatives.
Construction of the Amila Falls hydropower project and the mechanisms in the global financial system available to Guyana took center when the Guyanese head of state and IDB President Luis Alberto Moreno met in New York on September 24.
With the engineering, procurement and construction agreement signed on September 11 for the Amila Falls hydropower project and transmission line, the way is paved for construction of the $840 million project, which is expected by mid-2013. President Ramotar and IDB President Luis Alberto Moreno met in New York during the United Nations General Assembly to discuss the project, which the IDB is an integral partner.
The President, of course, talked to me about the project which we and the government of Guyana have been very engaged, which is the Amila Falls project. And, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we continue looking at all the possibilities and for this project.
The IDB is a prestigious partner in the project along with the Caribbean Development Bank and the government of Norway. Construction will be facilitated by Site Global.
We all understand it's a very big project and very important project for Guyana, for the bank, for Site, for all involved, for all the parties involved. It's a very important project. So obviously we all are looking at it and bringing the first stage. I don't think that we're very far away from bringing a conclusion to the first stage, then we begin the second stage of construction.
The hydro project is considered the largest transformative project in Guyana, with potential to significantly reduce the cost of electricity on the consumer and reduce the high cost incurred for fossil fuel importation. The government's investment in the project has been at the center of much media speculation, and in April its budgetary allocations were rejected in the parliament by the one-seat majority opposition. Earlier, the government was forced to terminate the road construction contract award to Synergy Holdings as a result of its failure to meet obligations under the contract agreement.
The 7-part debate on corruption carried live on the National Communications Network has ended, but the head of state said he would welcome another series, one that is more expansive.
Institutional corruption ended the final segment of the first ever live debate series on the state media. As usual, representatives of the government defended policy initiatives in institutions to rid corruption, while the representatives of the opposition rebutted. The debates have been fiery, ever so often requiring the moderator's intervention.
Explain CLICO in Trinidad and CLICO in Barbados. And
deal with Guyana, man. They should go workers' money in NIS.
The point I'm
$5 billion.
it is opportunistic.
It's going down the drain.
It is politically opportunistic of Mr.
$5 million Guyana dollars.
It is politically opportunistic.
Okay, we are just close your argument.
The consequence.
Just a minute, Dr. Singh.
Seek to translate it into a domestic problem.
Okay,
It
good.
is.
Mansour.
This is my problem. I think it's dishonest for Moses to say here that
Well, it's dishonest.
The coalition opposition party APNU opted out of the debate on the claims of one-sidedness, a claim which President Ramotar dubbed a smokescreen while speaking to the media recently.
A lot of what they have been saying, they themselves don't believe in, because they haven't had an opportunity to go and confront the government people.
Alliance for Change member Moses Nagamutu, who appeared on the final segment, was quoted in the media as applauding the initiative of the just concluded NCN-sponsored debate and called for its continuation. President Ramotar is looking for an innovative approach this time around.
We need more debates of that nature, more discussion of that nature.
Aspects of the 7-part debate series on corruption focused on NISIL, the President's Pension and Benefits, procurement, and the Amila Falls hydropower project.
That's all in this week's edition of the Diary for the period September 22 to 28. Before we go, these were just some of the highlights. The head of state delivers first address at the United Nations General Assembly. The UN Education First initiative gets underway, and the Guyanese head of state sits on the committee, and GAIEXPO 2012 opens. Thank you for joining us. Do have a pleasant rest of the week. I am your host, Fabian Klaus, and do remember to join us again when we bring you more.